Well, have a look at this. This is the latest from Tim Davie to the staff at the BBC. I want to acknowledge how challenging the last few days have been and to say how grateful I am for all your work during this weekend's disruption. He says it's a very difficult balancing act to get right, where people are subject to different contracts and on-air positions and with different audiences and social media profiles.
I'm not sure it was that difficult on this occasion, actually.
No.
I think anybody who listens to Paddy O'Connell's rather good Broadcasting House programme on the BBC, one of the shining lights of BBC radio on Sunday morning, would have heard Mark Damazer, who's no right-winger, in my view, a former controller of BBC Radio 4, reading out the specific guideline under which he reckoned Gary Lineker had undoubtedly crossed the line.
Yeah.
And here you have he's not just expressing an opinion on some general argument about transgender issues or something. He was expressing an opinion on a party political matter being debated in Parliament, which is a matter of dispute between the two major parties. Now, here's the point. The BBC exists, and I struggle with this increasingly, but I still try to believe it's a good idea. The BBC has this amazing arrangement. Under its charter and agreement, it gets the most extraordinary form of funding and the freedom to spend it in return for this agreement to be impartial. And it has, therefore, an absolutely binding duty to seek impartiality, because only on that basis can it have these enormous sacks of gold delivered to its offices every morning of your money and mine. It has, therefore, to insist on it. It's not freedom of speech when, for instance, when the king is required to stay out of party politics. Nobody says it's a breach of his freedom of speech. People understand that he has to stay out of party politics because he's too powerful to intervene in it, and it's just a matter of that some people are too powerful to be able to speak freely. If you have the enormous social media power of Gary Lineker provided by the BBC and basically on the licence fee, you cannot just use it in that way without endangering the whole basis of the licence fee. And I think it's quite simple. On this occasion, I don't think the BBC should pretend it's been anything other than simple. I think it's a mistake. It plainly is. It was something he shouldn't have done. And as I say, the way to sort it out is not to silence people. No. In my view, the way I disagree with the idea of silencing Lineker. The way to sort it out is to make sure the BBC promotes other voices who can put
indeed.
Imagine, by the way, has Gary Lineker ever been on a programme such as Question Time, a debate programme?
Well, I don't think he has.
I'd love to see him up against somebody who could argue the opposite position in public on live national TV. I'd love to see Gary Lineker's ideas tested against somebody who disagreed with him.
He's far too clever
on the same level
to make himself look stupid, is what I would say. Because
he may be right, but I don't think
he would be shown up.
This is how you attain balance. Okay, let him say it, but let him have his ideas tested against somebody.
Because whenever that has happened, because Russell Brand did go on Question Time and made a complete fool of himself, as did that guy who used to run the National Front.
Nick Griffin.
Yeah, Nick Griffin made himself look a complete fool, and that was the end of him. And he was never seen again.
Exactly. So let him try. But even if he comes out well, it would be good to see him actually making his case. So, for instance, what is his actual offending tweet said, didn't it, that the words being used were reminiscent of those used in Germany in the 1930s. Well, what words is he referring to that were used in Germany in the 1930s?
Well, I've been asking for these words.
To know what they were.
Well, I've been asking for these words on various shows that I've been debating people about, because, of course, the left-wing people that we know, that we debate with on a fairly regular basis, they all file in line behind that kind of thing without having any reason to agree with it, because they don't know. They just think, oh, well, this is obviously the right opinion to have, so I better have it as well.
Well, if you're going to say something like that to such a large audience with such a big impact, shouldn't you at least be taxed by somebody somewhere in public with the question, excuse me, Mr. Lineker, which words are you referring to?
Can you please show me a passage of speech?
During this whole controversy, nobody who has had access to Gary Lineker, as far as I know, has asked him that question. And there's been no sign of an answer to it.
No, because there won't be an answer to it, because there probably isn't anywhere that you can find it. But I've been expecting to see it, and I don't know whether we'll see it tomorrow. You know the Daily Mail probably better than me. The front page headline that will say who really runs the BBC, because I think the answer at the moment would appear to be Gary Lineker.
Well, I mean, I would always have said the liberal elite run the BBC, but
well, touche.
Ever since Hugh Carlton-Green was Director-General in my teens, it's been so. There was a revolution at the BBC which has never been properly accounted for, quite deliberately done. I think Lineker benefits from this, and I think they value him, but I doubt very much whether he has the, how shall I put it, the organisation and political skills to actually run.
No, but what I'm saying, I suppose, is that certainly he runs BBC Sports because all the decisions that were made at the weekend were as a result of him, and now going forward they will continue to be as a result of him.
Doesn't run the BBC, and that's the licence fee payers.
Yes,
and there is they have no access to any real way of influencing the corporation they pay for.
No.
There is absolutely nothing in the BBC structure which allows the licence fee payers to have any say. No council, court, committee, or anything anywhere where they're represented in any way where they can say actually. And if you try and complain to the BBC, I think we've discussed this before. Basically, most complaints bounce off the surface. If you send a complaint to the BBC, it's Capita that deals with it, and only if you complain about the complaint do you ever actually touch the actual nervous edge of the BBC.
Well, we're the only shareholders of a company for which there are no dividends.
That's also true, but it's plainly there is a problem of governance here, which it's difficult for the Conservative Party to solve because people will accuse it of trying to take over the BBC for its own ends, and in which Labour is apparently not interested. And this is a mistake because, again, these great institutions of our country will only survive if the people who run them respect them. And I've known a lot of BBC people who've been very serious about impartiality.
Me too.
But the numbers of them seem to me to be diminishing. And the numbers willing to say, oh, the heck with it, let's just do that.
Well, they famously got rid of a whole raft of very senior, decent journalists at one swoop. That was the John Burt years, wasn't it, when they just basically got rid of people who they didn't like very much because they were too traditional.
I must recommend the book about Can We Trust the BBC by my good friend Robin Aitken, which describes very much from the viewpoint of a BBC staffer who worked as a BBC journalist and who experienced this at first hand, just how bad it can be. And just how shocking it can be, and it's well worth reading.